What's up, everybody? It is Thegoal60 here, and this is the second preview video I have, and it is the SEC West. Now, if you haven't checked out the SEC East, I invite you to do so. And let's jump right in and look at what I have predicted for the SEC West standings. Just like the SEC East video, I said I was going to talk about a different aspect of how I came up with these projections. And in this video, I'm going to talk about turnovers. So mainly, that is, you see the biggest difference in turnovers from year to year is teams that turned the ball over a lot the year before, because they had all spring, all fall camp to work on that. You know, they work on whether it be the quarterbacks throwing interceptions, the running backs how to hold the ball, to keep as many points of contact as possible on the ball, or even defenses of how to look for the ball a little bit more. A lot of times that comes with a young defense getting older, focusing more on how to get the ball back to their offense versus just knocking the ball down, things like that. So that comes into play. And that is today's topic before I jump into all the other teams. Now, the first team, and you can call me a homer, you can do whatever you want. I've been called worse, trust me. But I do have Alabama finishing first in the SEC West. They're coming off a national championship. They bring back a lot of players. They generally reload every year. Like I said, you can call me a homer. I don't really care. That's just where I feel like these teams are going to finish. Now, we do have two new coordinators. Mike Locksley takes over the offense. He's been here. He takes over the offense. And on defense, we have Taj Lapoy. And he actually was here as well. He just stepped right in to that defensive coordinator position. Now, last year we had +8 in turnovers, so you look for that to come down a little bit, but not a ton. I mean, this is a good team year in, year out with a good coaching staff, obviously Nick Saban, and so you look at him to really focus on that's one of his main points every single year is turnovers. So you look at that not to come down a lot, but you got to think that it would come down some. Bringing back 7 offensive starters, unless, we get the new quarterback with Tua, which I do think will be the starter. So in that case, we would have 6 returning starters. 3 on defense. Lost a lot on defense, but with all the talent they have, you got to expect they're going to reload there. And as far as big games, I have don't overlook Missouri. In the SEC East video, you know I had them pretty high. On week 7, Mississippi State on week 11, and Auburn week 13. As far as projected stats, I have on the ground 240 yards a game, in the air 210, giving up around 90 yards a game on the ground on defense, and 180 yards in the air on defense. This team I have going undefeated. I don't know how else I could, the other games I looked at, it was going to be, we've got a chance to put up a lot of yards, a lot of scores. That is, the over-under is 11, so it's not enough to really give you a side on that. Now, the next team I'm going to talk about that I have coming in second in the West may surprise you, and that is Mississippi State. Now, I know they've got a brand new coaching staff coming in. I know that, their quarterback's coming off an injury, but I just feel like he's going to come back. He's going to be very good. He's a solid starter and has been since he's been there, and I just look for him to come back with a vengeance. He lost his head coach. He's coming back off an injury. I think he's going to give it everything he's got. They have 9 total starters, including that quarterback coming back on offense, 8 on defense. They were 0 on turnovers, so, they're right there at even. And so you hope that they would get better there. As far as big games, they go to Kansas State in week 2. They have Florida coming to them week 5. They have Auburn in week 6, and they're at Alabama week 11. So a lot of tough games, but a lot of those, or at least 2 of those at home. As far as projected stats, I have 240 yards on the ground, 175 yards in the air, giving up around 150 yards on the ground, and 195 in the air. I have them projected at 10-2. Now, that is with 2 conference losses. So, obviously, I have them beating Kansas State on the road week 2. The over-under right now is 8.5, and that's only a game and a half differential from what I have, so it's not enough to really, go with it. So that's it for Mississippi State, but I do have them finishing up second in the West. Now, the next team I have is the team I have coming in third, and the main reasons for this is 2 position groups. One being the offensive line is very young, And then 2, the defensive backfield is young as well, and that is Auburn. Auburn brings back 6 offensive starters, including Stidham, the quarterback. They also bring back 7 defensive players. I just feel like they're going to have a great year, or a good year at least on their standards, but they're going to have a lot to overcome in those areas. Now, they do make up for it in a lot of other areas, including all their skill positions are loaded. Their big games this year they have Washington in Atlanta game week 1. They're at Mississippi State week 6, at Georgia week 11, and at Alabama week 13. Now, that is a lot of tough games, and 3 out of the 4 are on the road. Well, all 4 of them are actually on the road. One of them is at a neutral site. You look at the stats, I have them projected rushing 230 yards a game. They have put up 1,000-yard rusher after 1,000-yard rusher, so I don't see that stopping. Offensive passing yards, I have around 235, and that's because of Stidham. That offensive line is going to grow up in a hurry, but I think they make up for a lot of that with getting the ball out quick with his progression. Defensively, I have them giving up 120 yards a game and also giving up 210 yards through the air game. They were +9 last year on turnovers, and they have the same core of coaches back. So those turnovers, I expect those to come down a little bit, closer to 0. And I have them going 10-2 versus the posted total of 9. It's only a game, so not enough there to make a decision. But I have them at 10-2, 6-2 in the SEC. Now, next up, I have LSU. LSU finishing in 4th place. They bring back 5 players on both sides of the ball, offense and defense, so a lot to replace there. They've got to find a quarterback. They haven't had a really good quarterback in a while. Now, the last one they had the last couple of years did fine. It wasn't great, but wasn't terrible. They really need to find a quarterback this year, and I think they will. They had a transfer from Ohio State, and I think he's going to end up being the starter this year and should be pretty okay with that. But you got to remember, he was 3rd string at Ohio State, which is, don't get me wrong, behind J.T. Barrett, behind the new starter that's there now. It's not like he was 3rd string at New Mexico State. But at the same time, that's, if he wasn't good enough to be in the top 2 rotation, what makes you think he's going to come in here and ball like crazy? I think he'll be good. I just don't know if he's going to be great. Now, as far as projected stats, I have 170 yards rushing, 180 yards passing, 145 yards given up on the ground, and 190 yards given up through the air. Big games, they have Miami week 1, at Auburn week 3, at Florida week 6, Mississippi State week 8, and Alabama week 10. So they have a very tough schedule. And with everything in, they've got a new offensive coordinator who's been here for a long time, 9 years, but he's just now taking over the offensive coordinator spot, and that is Steve Isminger. And, that's going to start up. They've got a really good defensive coordinator, but I've got them going 6-6, so I have them having a very mediocre year. Now, the next team I have finishing up in 5th in the West is Arkansas. Now, Arkansas brings back 9 offensive starters, including their quarterback. They bring back 8 defensive starters. They have a whole new coaching staff, brand new, with Chad Morris coming in from SMU. They finished up last year -3 in the turnover margin, so they're right around even. You expect that to be about the same or a little bit better. As far as projected stats, I have them at 155 yards on the ground, 225 yards in the air. Now, this offensive line has got to do a lot of adjusting with this new offense, but I think they can still put up those kind of stats. As far as defense, I think they'll give up around 205 yards and 235 yards as far as rushing and passing. I have them at 7-5. That's right above their total of 6, so it's not enough to give a play there. Like I said, I like to be at least 2 games or more differential before I make a move on a total. But that just kind of shows you I'm right around what they have. I think he's going to have a little bit better year than what people expect. He's going to come in there with, doing everything he can to win games. And I think he will that first half the season especially. But I have Arkansas finishing 5th at 7-5. Now, coming in 6th, I guess you've kind of narrowed it down to the last 2 teams that I haven't talked about, and this is an opportunity, I think, for a play on a total, and that is with Texas A&M. Actually, they come with a brand new staff coming in. It's Jimbo Fisher, a proven coach at Florida State and everything, but he just, he had his 1 championship. He went to the playoffs the very next year, But other than that, he's just kind of, he's had really good years. He's never been really bad. Last year was one of those where the wheels came off after their quarterback got hurt the first game. And I actually was very high on Florida State last year, I'll admit that. But they couldn't get it going. And that, to me, shows a lot about the coach if he can't get a little bit better than 6-6. But anyways, they bring back 8 starters at A&M. That does include, they had a rotation at quarterbacks last year, so I just counted that as one of the starters, and 8 on defense. So they got a solid amount of players coming back on defense. But I just feel like, this new staff, everything, the expectation is so much higher than it really needs to be right now for them. I think that's going to hurt them a little bit. I have them rushing for 160 yards a game, passing for 180. I have them on defense giving up around 170 yards a game and giving up 230 in the air. Now, I have them at 5-7, the over-under 7.5, so I'm looking at taking the under on Texas A&M. And following up the last spot in the SEC West, I have the Rebels of Ole Miss. Now, they do have technically a new coach. They did have the interim tag on Matt Luke last year, but he's been there the entire year, so I look at it as this is his second year in the system. He's got all the same core, kept his offensive coordinator, kept his defensive coordinator, so that will help. But there's just too much there. There's a lot of players that left. The quarterback, Shea Patterson, left and went to Michigan. Von Jefferson went to Florida. He's eligible to play for Florida. There's just a lot of players that were starters that left and kind of left the team hanging. Now, they do bring back quite a bit. 8 on offense, including their quarterback, TAMU, and then 7 on defense. They were -2 in turnovers, so let's look for them to be around that, right around even. I feel like they're going to rush for 135 yards a game, pass for 295. I've got a lot of passing yards. That offense is set up for a lot of passing yards. But I have them giving up a ton of yards on defense. 250 on the ground, 215 through the air. I feel like they did get a little bit better, but not too much. I have this team going 6-6. Their posted total is 6. They are not eligible for a bowl game this year. I have Ole Miss coming in last place in the West at 6-6. Now, just as always, I am, completely open to comments. Make sure you comment. Let me know what you think, where I'm off on these teams, what you feel like is going to happen with your team. If you would like to support the channel, you can click the link to Fanatics down in the description. Make sure you give the thumbs up if you liked the video. Hopefully you did. Hopefully watch the other previews, and also think about subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
60% of the time, it works every time.